Hello and welcome to Functions 2.4, Creating and Explaining Graphs. In today's lesson, we're gonna basically turn a story into a graph, and when we turn it into the graph, we also have to make sure we can explain how we arrived at the graph. I guess, what did we see in the story, and what did it do to help us to determine the shape and the characteristics of how the graph looks? So it's a pretty important lesson, so please be sure to pay close attention, because it's a problem that's going to be occurring and reoccurring on exams all throughout the year. So please make sure you master it really, really well. Okay, here we go. So here's the story. So there was a heavy thunderstorm yesterday, or not thunderstorm, here was a heavy rainstorm yesterday morning. It started raining heavily at 4 a.m., but by 8 a.m. the storm was over with a total rainfall of 6 inches. It didn't rain for the rest of the day. 2/3 of the day's rain had fallen by 6 a.m. During each time interval, the rain fell at a constant rate. Okay, so the things that you want to think about as you dissect this problem is kind of like mapped out in the questions that we're writing here. So you're probably just gonna read whatever story we give you, and you're gonna ask similar questions that help you figure out characteristics about the graph, or what kind of dots as far as coordinates you're gonna put on the graph, so that when you connect the dots, it forms the shape of the graph that maps out the story. So first question, what is the total number of inches of rain at midnight? Okay, so it says in the story, it started raining heavily at 4 a.m. So midnight, which is 4 hours before, one of the very first sentences in the story, says, what time is it? I'm sorry, what is the total number of inches of rain at midnight? Well, since rain didn't fall at midnight because it started at 4, then it's safe to say no rain has gathered or fallen, so I would say 0. And 0 inches is the answer. Okay, number 2. What was the total number of inches of rain at 4 a.m.? Okay, so the story also says starts to rain at 4 a.m. So has rain gathered yet? Gathered meaning like has it since it just started to rain, has it pretty much accumulated yet? No, because it just started. So it's still safe to say that there are still 0 inches of rain. Okay. All right, so number 3. Does the total number of inches of rain change between midnight and 4 a.m.? No, because at midnight it was 0 inches of rain, and at 4 a.m. it was still 0 inches of rain. Okay, so what is the total number of inches of rain at 8 a.m.? Okay, so let's make sure you read on the story, and it says, but by 8 a.m. the storm was over with a total rainfall of 6 inches. Okay, so I think 6 might be the answer. So 6 inches, very good. Okay, so what is the total number of inches of rain at noon? Okay, so let's see. By 8 a.m. the storm was over with a total rainfall of 6 inches. Okay, so it didn't rain for the rest of the day. Oh, so if it didn't rain for the rest of the day, is the 6 inches of total rainfall going to increase? No, I don't think so, because you got to think about that statement, a total rainfall of 6 inches. Yeah, so a lot of kids, sometimes they make a mistake and they put 0 for noon, because they're thinking to themselves, no rain fell, so shouldn't it go back to 0 like in questions 1 and 2? So no rain fell at midnight, so 0 inches. No rain fell at 4 a.m., so 0 inches. So in their brain, they're thinking, no rain fell at noon because the storm was over already, so shouldn't it be 0 inches? But you got to remember now that the key word here is total. So that means, what is the accumulated amount for the whole day so far? Yeah, and it says earlier at 8 a.m., we had 6 total inches of rain already. So at noon, your total rainfall for the day was still 6 inches. Yeah, even though it stopped raining, your total rainfall for the day is still 6 inches. So that's one thing you got to be super careful about. So a lot of kids, when they first start doing these problems, they make that mistake all the time. Okay? All right, number 6. So does the total number of inches of rain change between 8 a.m. and noon? Well, if the storm was over by 8 a.m., and it didn't rain anymore, then the number is going to stay the same, right? Because if you look at these two numbers, 6 inches for question 4, 6 inches for question 5, the rain didn't fall, so the rain didn't change, the amount didn't change. So 6 will be no. Okay. All right, number 7. What is the total number of inches of rain at 6 a.m.? Okay, that's going to get a little tricky. So let's read on the story. 2/3 of the day's rain had fallen by 6 a.m. Okay, 2/3 of the day's rain. So the day's rain, I'm assuming is gonna correspond to 6 inches of rain for the day's rain, and 2/3 of it had fallen by 6 a.m. So we might have to do some math here. So let me change it to pen, and we're gonna go 2/3 of 6 inches of rain. So 2/3. Okay, let's change that color. That color is too light. Okay, so 2/3 of 6 inches. Okay, so hopefully when you guys multiply fractions, you guys know the routine where, okay, let's make this 6 into a fraction as well. So let's put them as 6 over 1. So you're going to go top times top, bottom times bottom. So 2 and 6 are on the top. That makes 12. 3 and 1 on the bottom. That makes 3. And 12 divided by 3 is 4. Okay, so hopefully you guys know and remember how to multiply fractions. And if you don't, then I just showed you how to do it. So yeah, just rewind if you guys need to go back and look over it again. Okay, so question number 7, the answer should be 4 inches because that's 2/3 of 6 inches of rain for the day. Okay, all right, so these numbers are super important because they're eventually going to be used to make coordinates that we're going to use to map out the graph that we're going to do in the very next slide. Okay, all right, so when we make our graph, okay, you got to remember to label your x and y axis. Okay, so we're going to label the y-axis, the one that goes up and down. We're going to label him the total number of inches of rain. Yeah, and when you label your axis, make sure you say the word total because then it's going to imply the accumulation, right? How much has fallen altogether for the whole day. If you just say number of inches of rain that fell, then that's a totally different meaning. Yeah, where it's just saying at whatever time of the day how much rain fell. Yeah. So then your graph is going to jump up and down between 0 and whatever the number is. So make sure you say total because that's this problem is all about, the total number of inches of rain that fell. Okay, and the x-axis has to be time because this is also a problem based on time. Okay, so as long as you have those two labels for your x and your y-axis, you should be good to go. And when you label time, don't just put time and don't put a unit. Make sure you put, I guess, units, which in this case are hours because the problem starts off at midnight, then it goes all the way till noon. So yeah, you want to make sure you go in hours. I mean, yeah, I guess you go in minutes, but I don't think my graph is big enough to go in minutes, so you probably want to go in hours. Okay, and a key part of this label for the x-axis is since midnight, because when you label graphs, yeah, you can't just label it like numbers on a clock, yeah, because that's gonna be kind of weird. Because normally we don't see labels in a graph starting at 12, corresponding to midnight, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 again. And that's going to get confusing because you're going to go, okay, I have 12 all the way on the left side, and I have 12 all the way on the right side. Which 12 is going to be the one I want to use to plot dots? Okay, so when you look at this label for the x-axis, it says since midnight, yeah. And when you normally label numbers on a x and a y-axis, you start with 0, or maybe negatives if you want to go negative side as well. But you pretty much start at 0. Yeah, and you just work your way up from there. So if you look at my numbers, yeah, so I have normal numbers on my total number of inches of rain. That's 1 through 6 because 6 is my highest number that I got through for the day. And when you look at the time, it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, where 0 stands for midnight. And then from there, it's pretty easy to follow along. Yeah, 1 is 1 a.m., 2 is 2 a.m., 3 is 3 a.m., and so on and so forth. Okay, so this problem is pretty easy as far as the time part of the x-axis. You got to watch out when we get to the harder problems where the problem doesn't start off at midnight, but the problem is going to start off at maybe like 7 a.m. Then that's where it's going to get confusing because then the time frame is going to get all messed up. And I think you're going to see it in one of your homework problems tonight. So yeah, just be careful about that. Yeah, and if you make a mistake, when we show you how it's eventually done, just fix it up. Yeah, and just tell yourself, like, write a little note saying, don't make this mistake because, yeah, I did it wrong. I didn't really understand what he meant by 0 is going to be the time that your problem starts off at. Okay, all right. All right, so let's see some dots that we have to plot. So let's move the rest of this graph so you can see how this all looks. And you see this first dot, that's at 0. And it's going to be 0 on the x-axis, 0 on the y-axis because it's midnight, because 0 stands for midnight. Yeah, and it's going to be 0 on the y-axis because 0 inches fell. Okay, and then the line goes horizontal. It just goes straight across to the 4, 0 because 4 stands for 4 a.m. and it's still at a height of 0 because 0 inches fell. Okay. My next dot is going to be at 6, 4 because 6 stands for 6 a.m. 4 stands for 4 inches of rain has fallen so far. Okay, so between 4 and 6, 4 a.m. and 6 a.m., 4 inches of rain fell, so that's pretty heavy. Okay, and then my next dot is at 8, 6. Yeah, so 8, 6 is going to be 8 a.m. because the 8 on the x-axis stands for 8 a.m. and 6 on the y-axis stands for 6 inches of rain has fallen so far. Okay, and then lastly, the last dot is 12, 6, and here's where I told you guys lots of kids make lots of mistakes. They put the last dot down here on the bottom. Yeah, they put it at 0. And the reason why they put it back at 0 is because in their brain they're thinking, well, midnight 0 inches fell, 4 a.m. 0 inches fell, noon 0 inches fell, so why shouldn't my dot be all the way on the bottom? But you got to remember, this graph is showing the accumulation of rain that fell throughout the whole day. What is the whole amount that fell throughout the whole day? And the whole amount that fell is 6. It doesn't matter that it stopped raining. Yeah, this graph shows how much rain fell all throughout the day as a sum, as a total. Yeah, that's why when you label your y-axis, you got to make sure you put total inches of rainfall. You just can't put inches of rainfall, because if you put inches of rainfall, that totally means something different. That just means how much rain fell at that moment in time. Okay, so you got to put total inches of rainfall. All right, and one thing that I forgot to do when I made this slide, yeah, I noticed it when I looked at it just now when I was doing this video. You want to label these dots with the coordinates. So this dot is at 12, 6. So whenever you do your graphs, you want to label your dots with the coordinate values right next to it. Yeah, and this one is 8, 6. And I'm pretty strict about grading these graphs where you need to have these coordinates written on the graph itself. And if I don't see it, then I kind of mark you off with points. So please make sure you do that. Yeah. I don't know if you're another student from another class with another teacher, that teacher might not be as strict, but that's their call. Yeah. So if you're in my class, then yeah, you got to be writing these coordinates next to these dots. And if I don't see them, I'm going to dock off points. So please make sure you do. Okay, so there you go. This would pretty much get perfect points for the graph portion of this problem when you guys are doing this as an assessment type problem. Okay, all right, so this is the part of the problem where we turn the story into the graph. Part 2 of this problem is going to be a written explanation as far as how we arrived at this shape. Yeah, and it's going to require us to write sentences, which won't seem like a math class because in math classes you don't normally write like sentences, yeah, with words. You just write numbers usually, so this is going to seem kind of weird. Okay, so you're gonna write two different types of statements that are going to describe two different pieces of the graph. So when we drew the graph, we drew one of two things. We either drew a dot or we drew a line. Yeah, and we wanted to draw the dots first because it pretty much tells us where the graph is. Yeah, and the dots are going to pretty much map out the lines that we're going to fill in later on also. So when we write our explanation statements, we're going to explain how we got the line. Yeah, what does that line represent? Yeah, and we're going to use math vocabulary to I guess describe the line as well. So in this first, or in this next slide, I guess you can say, I call these things I drew statements because I'm actually going to draw lines, yeah, when I draw my graph. So I call these the I drew statements. All right. So there's I drew statements that are good, and there's I drew statements that are not so good. So these 4 statements show you guys which one is the best one to write and which one is the worst one to write. I mean, it's not wrong if you write the worst one. It's just not the best one. Yeah. So there's 4 options that we can pick from, and we're going to number them from 1 to 4, where 4 is the best, 1 is the worst. Yeah. So let's read through these first 4 statements. So I drew a horizontal line from 0, 0 to 4, 0. Okay. Second one, I drew a line from 0, 0 to 4, 0. I drew a line from t equals 0 to t equals 4. I drew a horizontal line from t equals 0 to t equals 4. So of the 4 that you just read, which is probably the best, most descriptive, the one that tells you the best information? Which one do you think that is? And if you say the top one, the first one, then you are correct, because it tells you what kind of line it is. It's a horizontal line, and it tells you where exactly to look for it on the graph. It says to look at dot or point 0, 0 and 4, 0, and in between 0, 0 and 4, 0, you're going to see that horizontal line that we drew. So that's the best possible sentence to write. Okay, and if you have that, then I'm super happy on it. You're good to go. Okay. What is the next best sentence to write or statement to write? Okay, and usually kids they see a toss up between the second one and the fourth one. So some kids they think of I drew a line from 00 to 40 as the second best choice. Yeah, and other kids they go, no, I think the horizontal one is better. I drew a horizontal line from t equals 0 to t equals 4. Okay, so because we're drawing lines, yeah, my theory is because we're more descriptive about what kind of line it is, it's a horizontal line. That's why I give the edge to I drew a horizontal line from t equals 0 to t equals 4. So that would be my second best statement. Okay, third best statement would be I drew a line from 0, 0 to 4, 0 because you're telling the person exactly where it is. Okay, and the worst possible statement you can write is I drew a line from t equals 0 to t equals 4. Okay, so you're not wrong if you write any of these four statements. You're just not going to get full points because you're not giving me the best answer. Okay, so 4, 2, 1, 3. So 4s are going to be the ones that if we rate it as a 4, that's the one you're going to want to make sure you write in your explanation for part 2 of this problem. Okay? All right, so let's get the next I drew statement that we're going to evaluate. Yeah, so that was this first one that we evaluated is this first part of the line right here. Oops, it's not drawing. Okay, so we just figured out the statement to draw that line right there. So when we start evaluating the next 4 sentences, we're going to evaluate which is the best one for this. Yeah, which is going to best describe that part of the graph. Okay, so let's pick a statement that's going to best describe that part that starts going on. So I drew a line from 40 to 64. I drew an increasing line from 40 to 64. I drew an increasing line from t equals 4 to t equals 6. And last one, I drew a line from t equals 4 to t equals 6. So which one do you think is the best one? The one that shows us or tells us information about the line, and it also tells us where to find it on the graph. Which one does those two things? Tells us information about what the line looks like and where to find it. And if you said the second one, this guy right here, yeah, this one should get the 4, you're absolutely correct because it tells us what kind of line it is, it's increasing, and it tells us exactly where to find it between 40 and 64. Okay, so what's the next best statement or choice? Well, remember I told you guys earlier, some kids they think where to find the line is important, and other kids think that what type of line, what kind of characteristics does that line have is the next best thing. Okay, and the bottom line is this, yeah. Remember now, we're writing I drew statements. Yeah, like we're drawing lines. Yeah, so since we're drawing lines, that's going to give the edge to what kind of characteristic the line has, which in this case it's increasing. So I'm not saying that where it is found in the graph is not important. I'm just saying that the characteristic of the line being increasing is going to give the edge to this guy compared to this guy. Okay, so I'm not saying location is not important. I'm just saying what kind of characteristic does the line have is more important than where it is because we're doing the part of the explanation called I drew, like I'm drawing lines. Okay, and the absolute worst thing to have is this guy, the fourth guy, because that doesn't tell us what the line looks like, that it's increasing, and it doesn't really give us the exact location. Yeah, it just tells us t equals 4. It doesn't tell us anything about the height or the y value. Okay, so did my answers match? 2, 4, 3, 1. Yep, they did. Okay. All right, so let's see. The next line that we're going to describe is this second increasing line, the one that's right here. So we're going to pick a statement that's going to match that right there. Yeah. So let's find a statement that best matches that third segment, that third line part that we just circled, that I just erased actually. Okay, so remember now, what makes the line the best choice is it tells us a characteristic about the line and it tells us the location where to find it. So which of these 4 statements tells us what kind of line we're looking at and where to find it? Yeah. So is it the first, second, third, or fourth option in this next slide? And hopefully you see this guy right there. Yeah. And then who's the next best answer? Well, let's look for a statement that still talks about the line's characteristics. Yeah, it doesn't really tell us about the exact location, but at least it tells us about the line's characteristics. So that would be the second one. This is the second best answer. And then the next one tells us at least the location. It doesn't tell us about the line exactly, but it tells us the location where to find it. So that would be this guy. And the absolute worst answer would be this top one. Okay. So let's see. Does the answers match? Yep. 1, 3, 2, 4. Very good. Okay. And this last one. Okay, so remember now the criteria? Characteristic about the line and where do we exactly find it? Yeah, so which one has that 2 bits of information? Yeah, characteristic about the line and where do we exactly find it on the graph? So that would match this guy right there. Oops, okay, I gotta put it back in pen mode. So this guy matches both of those criteria. Okay, then the next best answer is going to be something about the line's characteristics, not necessarily about the location, but at least it tells us about the line in general. So that would be this guy. Okay, and the second to the worst answer, yeah, is going to not tell us about the line's characteristic, but at least it tells us the location. So that'd be this guy. And an absolute worst answer, because it doesn't tell us anything, well, it kind of tells us something, but not enough. Yeah, not very good, is this guy. Okay, so let's see if my answers match the real answers. So 3, 2, 4, 1. Yes, it does. Okay, so those are called the I drew statements. Okay. Okay, next thing we want to explain is the dots on the graph. So how do we actually get all these dots to be where they are? Yeah, and that comes into play with the questions that we answered on the very first slide. Yeah, like how much rain fell at midnight, how much rain fell at 4 a.m., how much rain fell at 6 a.m., and all that kind of stuff. So all those questions help us figure out the coordinates of the graph. Okay, so this is what this next part is going to do. It's going to explain what 0 and 0 means, and 4 and 0, 6 and 4, 8 and 6, 12 and 6. It's going to tell us exactly what every single one of those numbers mean. Yeah, and in some cases, it's going to tell us how we actually got the number too. Yeah, so in this first example, we're always going to explain the x coordinate first. So yeah, whenever you start your coordinate explanation, always explain the x coordinate. Yeah, so I'll do that now. I'm going to go over every single one of these sentences, and I'm going to explain the x's first. So the x value in the first coordinate is 0. So what does 0 stand for? Well, 0 stands for midnight. Yeah, so t equals 0, which in this case is my x is 0, stands for midnight. Okay, and then the next coordinate, the 4. Yeah, remember now I said whenever you write your coordinate explanation, you want to explain your x coordinate first. Yeah, so what does the 4 mean? So t equals 4, which is like x equals 4. Oops, how come that's not moving? Stands for 4 a.m. So notice how I have the x coordinate 0, the x coordinate 4, and right next to it I have the time of the day. Yeah, so in this particular problem, 0 stands for midnight. In other problems, you might get a situation where 0 stands for 9 a.m. Yeah, so if 0 stands for 9 a.m. in another problem, then t equals 4 would stand for 1 p.m. Because when you add 4 hours to 9 a.m., you're going to get 1 p.m. So you got to be real careful with the starting point of your problem. So in this case, in this first problem, we were super nice. We started off the problem at midnight, so we call it midnight 0. And then when you go on a clock, then 4 would be 4 a.m. So it actually kind of matches up nicely. But that kind of misleads students at times because they're thinking that it's always going to be like this. Yeah, where 4 is 4 a.m., 5 is 5 a.m., 6 is 6 a.m., and so on. Yeah, so that kind of misleads kids into thinking that it's going to be easier to figure this x coordinate out, yeah, as far as time is concerned. But when we start getting tricky, yeah, we're going to start making the problem start off at like 10 a.m. And then in this situation, if the problem starts at 10 a.m., then t equals 0 is 10 a.m. Then t equals 4 would be 2 p.m. Yeah, because 4 hours after 10 a.m. is 2 p.m. So you got to be real careful about that. So yeah, so I know you might not have caught on to this really carefully, but just take a note of the time frame of when I just made that statement. And when you get to the next problems on your homework, and we start messing around with the starting time of the problem, then you're gonna want to rewind this video back to that timestamp that you wrote down in your notes. Yeah, that when I talk about different times, not starting at midnight, you want to go back to that particular time frame in the video and re-listen to it. Okay. All right. So let's see. The next x value is 6. So t equals 6. That is going to correspond to 6 a.m. Yeah. So like I said, we started off easy. All the x values are going to start off, they're going to pretty much relate to the time of the day exactly. So 8 is going to be 8 a.m. and 12 is going to be noon. Yeah. So there's no confusion there when you have a problem that starts off at midnight. Yeah. Okay, so we explained all the x coordinates, and let's explain the y coordinates. So what does a 0 mean for the y coordinate? Well, 0 is going to be the y-axis. It's going to be for the y-axis, and the y-axis stands for 0 total inches of rain. So that's why we have our second blank. So there were 0 total inches of rain. Yeah, so notice how you see the two numbers of the coordinate in the explanation. So 0 for x, 0 for y. Okay, so let's explain the next y value for the next coordinate. So 0 for the y coordinate in the next coordinate. And so it says the total amount of rain did not change. So there's your key statement right there. So when it says did not change, Yeah, what was my y value before? My y value was 0. And if it didn't change, is it still 0? Yeah, it's still 0. Yeah. So you might not necessarily see the number 0 written in your explanation, but because I wrote did not change, I'm going to assume that it did not change from the previous value of 0. Yeah. And that's why you're going to talk about the number 0 and why it's still 0, but you're not going to have it actually necessarily written in your problem. You can write it if you want, but you don't have to, as long as you explain that it's still 0. Yeah. And why didn't it change? Yeah. Then you just write a reason for why it didn't change. Make sure you write the reason now. Yeah. Make sure you write the reason for why the y value didn't change. And how come the y value didn't change? Because it didn't start raining, because it started raining at 4 a.m. Okay. So the tricky part about the y value is you got to explain why the values do things. Yeah, so there's going to be scenarios where the y value doesn't change. There are going to be scenarios where the y value does change. So just make sure you put a little statement in the sentence saying what's happening from one y value to the next. In the previous one it was 0, in the next one it's still 0. Why is it still 0? Because it started raining at 4 a.m. Okay. Your next y value, the third one, 6, 4. So why is it 4 now? Yeah. So what does the 4 stand for? Well, the 4 stands for 4 inches of rain so far. Okay. And why is it 4? Because it was 0 just 2 hours earlier. So what's up with the 4? Where did we get that? And then you see this part, because this is 2/3 of 6 inches. Yeah. So we got the 4 because 4 is 2/3 of 6 inches. And that's exactly what the story told us. So once again, you're explaining how come your y value changes from 0 to 4. Yeah. How does it do that? Yeah, because in your story it states 2/3 of the rain fell by 6 a.m. So make sure you explain how your y values change from one coordinate to the next. Okay, so your next y value, it's a 6 now, so it went from 4 to 6. Yeah, so we're going to see a 6 in your explanation, 6 total inches of rain. Yeah, and yeah, just make sure you talk about the change. Yeah, it's not really written here. Yeah, but yeah, just make sure you just make a statement that says that more rain still fell, or the rain was still falling. Okay? So I know it's not written here, but just make that little note that rain is still falling at 8 a.m. until 8 a.m. All right? And then your last one, 6 again. Yeah, so why is it not changing? Why is it still 6? Yeah, and it says again, the total amount of rain did not change. Yeah, so that's pretty much going to imply that it was 6 before and it's still 6 right now. And it's because the storm was over by 8 a.m. Okay? So main things you want to remember are, make sure you explain what each of these numbers mean. Make sure you have the numbers that are in the coordinates in your explanation, unless the numbers don't change, like in 6 going to 6 or 0 going to 0. Yeah, and make sure you give a little reason, a little statement as far as how it went from one number to the next. Okay, and if you can do that, then you're in good shape. All right, and when you start writing your answer next to your graph, so a couple of slides earlier I had a picture of the graph. So right next to that picture of the graph, you're going to have all this written right next to it. So there's going to be a lot of writing. Okay. Oh, and look here. Yeah, remember I told you guys in that fourth statement, we didn't include how come the number went from 4 to 6? Well, here it is. Yeah, so I kind of added it into my own. Yeah, so it continued raining. That's why your number is going from 4 to 6, because it continued raining. So I kind of just added that in. Yeah, maybe I realized that this is the route that I want to go on, so I kind of changed that particular part of the statement. Okay, so make sure you guys always include what's happening with the y values. Okay, you don't have to write an explanation of what's happening to the x values, because yeah, some kids always ask, so do we have to explain why the x value is 4 and it was 0 before, or why it's 6 and it was 4 before? And I thought, well, no, you have to explain why time continues and time moves. Yeah, time always moves. Yeah, but you do have to explain what's going on with the rainfall, the total rainfall. Yeah, why is it sometimes staying the same? Why is it sometimes going faster, like from 0 to 4, that's pretty fast, or from 4 to 6, that's a little bit slower, or not changing at all, 6 to 6, right? So the y value is the one you really want to explain what's going on, what's up with that. Okay, the x values, don't worry about that, because like I said, time always moves. If time stayed the same for two different coordinates, then you might want to make a little note as far as why is the x value not changing from one value to the next. Then you want to make a little note on that. Okay, but other than that, yeah, don't worry about the x's as far as what's going on. Just worry about the y values. Okay, all right. So I think you have 2 problems for homework, and I'm going to give you some hints. Well, I think I'm giving you hints on the 2 problems, so let's take a look for your 2 homework problems. Okay, so here's how you're going to have it written on your paper pretty much. You're going to have your graph on the right side, yeah, or graph somewhere on your paper. And right next to it on the side, you're going to have your I drew statements, and you're going to have your coordinate explanation. Yeah, so if you're in my class, this is the way I want you to map out the answer. If you're in another teacher's class and you're watching my videos, it's fine. That teacher might not want you to organize your problem in this way, so just follow their lead. If they want you to do another technique, then just follow what they say. But as far as the content of what you write, okay, me and whoever you have should be pretty much the same. Okay, and I kind of helped you out with the labels of the x and the y-axis because a lot of kids they get that wrong in the beginning. So I'm kind of gonna lead you in the right direction right off the bat. Yeah. So I think this first problem is still about rainfall, so the labels are pretty much the exact same as the example problem I just went over. Okay, so I'm not gonna unhide these boxes because these are your homework. Yeah, if you have questions, just come ask me later on. All right. Okay, and then your second problem is a totally different story. It's a story about your phone being used and charged throughout the day or something like that. Yeah. So your labels for your x and y-axis are going to change totally. So notice how it's not about rainfall for your x-axis. I'm sorry, your y-axis. It's battery charge percent. Yeah. And notice how your x-axis is labeled hours past since 7 a.m. So this is where you really got to be careful. So this is what I told you guys about, right? So this problem starts at 7 a.m. Yeah. So 7 a.m. is going to be like your 0 on your x-axis. And x equals 1 is going to be 8 a.m. X equals 2 is going to be 9 a.m. X equals 3 is going to be 10 a.m. X equals 4 is going to be 11 a.m. X equals 5 is going to be noon. So you got to really be careful. In the example I just went over, the problem started at midnight. So that's why midnight was 0. 1 is 1 a.m., 2 is 2 a.m., 3 is 3 a.m., 4 is 4 a.m., 5 is 5 a.m., and so on and so forth, right? It kind of made things a little bit easier for your first run at this problem. Yeah, and this problem for homework, it's going to get a little bit more crazy because your problem starts at 7 a.m. So 0 is going to be 7 a.m. 1 is going to be 8 a.m. 2 is going to be 9 a.m. 3 is going to be 10 a.m. 4 is going to be 11 a.m. and so on and so forth. Yeah, so you continue your numbers all the way until your problem ends. Okay, so be really, 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 really careful. And when you label your axis, don't label it 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2. Don't label it like numbers on a clock. Okay, you cannot label x-axis that way. You got to label x-axis with your 0 through whatever it goes up to. Okay, that's the way you got to label your x-axis. You cannot label it like numbers on a clock. That is not how you do it. All right. So I cannot stress that enough because so many kids make that mistake on the first try because they have that in their brain that you can label it the same way you label a clock. No, you cannot do that. You label it 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and whatever you need up to. Okay. So good luck on this, and I will see you in class. All right. Bye-bye.